What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Junkyard Dawgcast. I'm your host, Jordan Hill. Got Kipp Adams and Ben Wolk with me on this Tuesday afternoon. And fellas, it's game week. Georgia Marshall, we're going to get into that matchup 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time on ESPN. Do a preview, share some of what Kirby Smart and players had to say on Monday as the Bulldogs get ready for the Thundering Herd. We're going to talk about that. Talk a little bit about Week 0, the start of college football. What else we're watching for on Saturday with a huge slate, really starting on Thursday night and working our way through Labor Day. And then we'll finish off with the big news from last week, the SEC moving to 9 conference games and getting ready for that in 2026 going forward. So hang around. If you're watching this on YouTube, please subscribe to Dawgs 24/7. Go join us at Dawgs247.com. Get in with the fall camp special, 50% off. A big time opportunity, and we hope you guys will follow along with us this football season. Let's get the episode going. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Junkyard Dawgcast. I am your host, Jordan Hill. Got Kipp Adams and Ben Wolk with us on this Tuesday afternoon, and we are getting ready for the start of Georgia's 2025 season. Georgia taking on Marshall on Saturday, 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time. That game will be televised by ESPN. We're going to spend the bulk of this episode talking about that matchup, what we're watching for, what Kirby Smart players had to say on Monday as they get ready for Week 1. We will also talk about some of the other matchups in Week 0 that we got to see, Week 1, some of the other games we'll be paying attention to, and we will also talk about the big news from last week with the SEC moving to a 9-game conference schedule starting with 2026 season, what that means for Georgia, what we're anticipating there. I'll start it right here. Our intrepid reporter in the field, Ben Wolk, he might be kind of in and out on this episode, but he's coming to us. He's had a chance to check out some schools this morning. Ben, how excited are you for the start of the Georgia season?
I mean, it feels like football season. I'm in my car in a parking lot. I'm trying to, for anyone watching on YouTube, I'm trying to cover up no free ads for us up here in the top right corner. But it feels like football season. We got Kirby Smart yesterday. I'm battling between my laptop and my phone, and I'm trying to make this all work. And if you're watching, I hope for your sake you're listening to this episode, not watching, because I'm going to be in and out causing all sorts of hell for Jordan, trying to figure out when I am and not going to be available for him to pass it over to me. But I'm just pumped because we're talking about an actual football game. It's actually football season. I don't know about y'all, but I'm pretty fired up for this upcoming weekend.
Oh, yeah, super excited. It was kind of funny this morning when I got up. I always get up and walk our dog, and I walked outside, and it felt like fall. Like it was actually kind of chilly. So this is nice. I don't know how much we're going to get to experience that. But Kip, how about you? How excited are you to get this thing going?
It's actually cold. I mean, I had to break out, the hoodie for this, and I don't believe it. I think we're, a week or two from now, we'll be sweating it back in the 90s. This is that fake fall, but you know what? I take the fake falls with the real ones because this slate of college football this weekend is unreal. So I'm just excited to be back in it. This is the best time of the year because you just have triple digit fan bases that have that have hope. And then you know what? It's not just about who's going to win it all. We cover a program where that's the expectation, but just college football in general. Just so many outstanding fan bases get to go out and see their teams play, and that really is. Even though we talk every week about all the changes in the sport, at the end of the day, it's just about all the fan bases getting to see their favorite team, the school they went to, and the players that they follow and love play football. And I think this is probably my favorite week of the year for that reason.
Yeah, with all the changes, I think the worst part of that, as someone who covers the sport and even as fans, a lot of that is happening in the dead of the off season. And you're just like, can we please get to some games? And took us a little while, but we finally got there. And let's jump right into it. Georgia Marshall, 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time, ESPN on Saturday. A matchup that Georgia's non-conference schedule is not all that impressive this season, aside from that Georgia Tech game. But I do want to note. Week 0, week 1, Georgia and Marshall are the only two defending conference champions playing each other. So I'm just saying, Georgia going out and playing the Sun Belt champion from last year. But, looking at Marshall and get ready for this matchup, this is not the 2024 version of the Marshall Thundering Herd. Head coach Charles Huff left in the offseason, took the Southern Miss job. And Tony Gibson, who was most recently NC State's defensive coordinator, now the head coach at Marshall. And the roster looks almost nothing like the roster that won the Sun Belt last year. I was looking at it today for a story. 9 of their top 10 tacklers from a year ago are gone. They had something around 60 players transfer out of the program. About 21, 22 of them followed Charles Huff to Hattiesburg and Southern Miss. So it's a roster that's starting over and having to learn, get settled, get on the same page with the new head coach and learn quite a bit on the fly. And, no big deal for Tony Gibson. Very first game is going to be between the hedges against Georgia. Kirby Smart was asked on Monday about the challenge of trying to prepare for this Marshall team, given all the uncertainty, all the new faces. And Kirby explained a lot of it is about Georgia focusing on itself.
Start with yourself, right? You prepare yourself by how you run to the ball, how you strike people, how you move people, how you run the ball, throw the ball, don't turn it over. A lot of sloppiness in first games, penalties. So it starts with that. So you're asking about the opponent. The opponent is us, and it's going to be us every week this year. It is important that we know what they do, and sometimes that's less information than others. They've got an interesting staff makeup of guys from all over. They got an interesting roster makeup of guys from all over, some of which they couldn't control because they had a lot of guys leave after the head coach left. So, we've got individuals from all over. I don't know that I've ever seen a roster that when we write on the depth chart transfer, it's 3 deep transfer, 4 deep transfer, 3 deep transfer, all these spots. A lot of transfers. But that's more and more evident all over. Probably the first games all over the country this weekend will be a lot of guys figuring out, like, well, who's in that spot? Who's in that spot? Nobody has a clue who's in those spots. The less teams are in the spotlight, the less you'll know. But, again, it'll be probably more of an adjustment from the kickoff to the first quarter than most games, but it'll also be about us.
I'm not sure. Can you guys hear me? For some reason, our video is.
Yeah, I got you.
I got you as well.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on with our video, but I wanted to ask you, Kipp, on this piece of it. There we go. The part of this matchup, and you look at this matchup, it's very clear, Georgia, I think, is like a 39.5-point favorite. With everything that's changed at Marshall, I would have to think that this is something of an advantage as much as Marshall can have. But my thought when it comes to a roster that's pretty much starting over, this is probably an extreme example, but going into seasons, in 2025, I think coaching staffs like Georgia are used to having to really work to scout, the teams they play early in the season because of the portal. Do you have any concerns in this matchup just because there's so much unknown about Marshall and, it really has kind of pushed Georgia and how they prepare for, what is about as close to a brand new team as you're going to get in FBS football?
That kind of uncertainty provides an opportunity for Kirby Smart and the coaching staff to just provide, learning opportunities for their players. They're probably telling them all week, like, this is what, their tendencies of this coaching staff, but we have to prepare for every single situation because we're not sure what they're going to do, what personnel they're going to use. So that gives them kind of a blank canvas to go out there and try to prepare for everything. And I think that's really, you look at Georgia's schedule, again, with Marshall, with Austin Peay, with those games early, this is really an important stretch for Kirby Smart and his coaching staff to get the young players in this team as many snaps as possible. And so when you not really sure what Marshall's going to do out there, I think it does give you just an opportunity for all the different personnel groups that you might have to employ during the year. You have to prepare all of them for this first game, because they might come out, in heavy set. They might try to spread the ball out. And then on defense, they might, bring 3 and 4 pass rushers to where you're having to go heavy, or you're having to ask your running backs to pick up, the pass rush more often than expected. I think this is actually a good thing for this coaching staff. And knowing that, this game isn't really going to come down to the box score or the expectations there. It's really going to be about getting these players prepared and as much experience as possible. So I think in the end, the portal transfers for Marshall, it's a lot of adversity for them, but I think that unexpected unpredictability is a good thing for Georgia's coaching staff.
Yeah, it makes it interesting too, I think, because Tony Gibson is a defensive coach. It's not like you can look at, okay, these are the offenses he's run in the past. And a lot of coaches on the defensive side of the ball, we'll see how he adapts to the personnel he's got. I'm sure that they went out and recruited guys that they feel like fit their scheme, but, there's going to be a lot of adjustment. And, Kirby talked about that they may throw out a couple different quarterbacks, some that can move a little bit better than others. And I think that there will be a lot of learning on the fly. But like Kipp said, I do think that, that's a good early test, especially for, looking at like the Georgia defense. It's going to be a lot of guys that are playing more snaps than they've ever played before. So we'll see how they handle that and everything that's thrown at them. I want to bring up this clip off of something Ben asked Kirby on Monday. A big talking point throughout this offseason has been about the ground game, really on both sides of the ball, running the ball, stopping the run, and emphasis on that. Ben asked Kirby about, where he feels like the team is on both fronts and what they kind of use to measure what is successful as far as running the ball and stopping the run. That's what Kirby had to say.
Yeah, I measure how we play in games of, throughout the year, but the SEC schedule, because there's a consistency in the SEC schedule. Our out-of-conference schedule changes every year. Who we play when, where do we play them? Was it on the road, crowd noise, was it neutral site, all those things. So the most consistent thing on our schedule is our SEC schedule, and we try to measure at the end of the year based on that. There's metrics for every game, right? Yards per carry is a good metric. Sometimes yards per carry can be skewed. If it's 3rd and 15 and you run for 9, is that success? Probably not, because you didn't get a first down. So for us, it'll vary based on the way we measure it, but it is important. And to the level of confidence, I think there's no complete confidence on where your run game and your run stopping is until you play somebody else, because each and every day we go out the field, somebody wins and loses a play. So there's confidence gained, confidence lost when you're against each other.
Ben, what did you think of Kirby's kind of breakdown when it comes to the run game and how they measure it? And what's your expectations going into week 1?
Well, I wanted to ask about it just because it has been brought up so much throughout the year. And again, I wrote about this earlier, Dawgs 24/7 too. Like, it's not some revolutionary thing. Oh, Georgia needs to run the ball and stop the run. It's not groundbreaking. What Kirby Smart and Glenn Schumann and Mike Bobo is no different than what Joe Schmo 2 has said on the message board so far this offseason. Like, it's something that was very clear as a setback. Statistically, like when you just look at yards per carry, like I know Kirby Smart contextualized what yards per carry could mean in certain situations, but when you just look at yards per carry and yards per carry allowed in 2024 compared to what we're accustomed to in the Kirby Smart era, it just isn't up to the standard. Again, nothing groundbreaking or earth-shattering in that revelation. Like, that's just what was obvious from last year. And if Georgia isn't better in that area this season, there's going to be people that don't have jobs next year that have them right now. There's going to be a complete introspective look at what Georgia has to do to get back to what it was comfortable with when it comes to those two areas. I think because of how much it has been emphasized, because of how much of a conversation, like even, when I was writing about it, there were players that I didn't include in what I was writing about that brought it up. I mean, Jordan Hall kind of unprompted brought it up yesterday, just talking about stopping the run being like, I think it was when he was asked about the Georgia running backs and talking about like when you're going to have to stop the run the way that we're going to be asked to stop the run. And you've got a Georgia running back group that's as versatile as it is. It prepares you for a lot of different things that you're going to see throughout the year. And so I think Georgia is prepared, but even as Kirby Smart just said right there, you really don't know. It's one of the tough, probably unsettling things as a head coach when it comes to when you're running the ball well in practice, that means you're not stopping the run well. When you're stopping the run well at practice, it means you're not running the ball well. I think you want a fall camp where you have some wins on both sides, and Georgia has certainly had that. What I think is interesting is like so much has been consumed about Georgia's ability to run the ball offensively, which they're going to have to improve. But I also think the downfield passing game is going to be improved this season as well. So I think that's going to be incorporated into the strategy just as much. I think if Georgia's going to be what Georgia needs to be or has been, they're going to need to stop the run on defense. And I think that that's something they just flat out didn't do as well the last 2 seasons as they really had done the 4 years before that.
And two, I would encourage people to go check out Jordan Hall talking about Georgia's different running backs for the other side of the ball, being able to run the ball better. He was very explosive, very detailed, talking about the different backs, what they provide, what they're able to do. I think that I like getting perspective from someone like Jordan Hall in the run game because he's asked to stop it every day at practice. So I thought that was really interesting. To kind of hear what Jordan had to say there. Really thought this was kind of insightful from Kirby when asked about Saturday specifically and what would constitute a successful day for the Georgia offense is what Kirby shared.
Hitting goals, we have some really lofty goals. We go in and we say, okay, we got about 15, 20 goals up there that we look for. And if we hit those goals, then we usually played well. And if we don't, then we usually didn't. There's run goals involved in that, third down conversion rate, red zone rate, yards per completion rate, turnover rate, penalty rate. There's a lot that goes into that. So I can't simply say just win the game. There's more to it than that. And we'll look at it and we'll see where we are and then we'll figure out what we need to work on.
I was kind of glad that Kirby brought up third down right there because it was something I had forgotten about until I was reading some of the final stats from last season. If you guys will remember, Georgia was first in third down conversion 2023, dropped to 77th nationally, was something like 39.1% third down conversions, a drastic drop off. And I do think a lot of that was due to the run game and struggling to set up enough third and manageables, third and shorts, to allow the offense to stay on the field. So thought that was really interesting, that piece of it specifically. But Kipp, I wanted to ask you, Kirby talked about goals and what they want to hit. Now, he didn't share specifically what they need to hit, what those objectives are, probably for the best, even though that would give us a lot to talk about in our game thread on Saturday. But what constitutes a successful game against Marshall for you as far as this Georgia offense? What do you think they need to accomplish for you to say, look, this was a good day for Georgia's offense?
Well, it starts with no injuries. That would be number one on Kipp's keys to a good day against Marshall. You obviously have a long season, and injuries play such a huge role in the team's success. When Georgia's healthy, they usually end up with among the final couple of teams. You want to have an efficient outing from Gunner, him making smart decisions with the football. He doesn't need to go out there and throw for 400 yards, and I doubt he'll be given that opportunity. But you do want him to, again, not turn the ball over and get the ball where it needs to be. I think that's probably right up there with no injuries as far as how important it is to see him come out and perform well. And then also this constitutes you want to have a fast start. I mean, Georgia's been plagued last season. All the stats out there with them going scoreless in the first half. How many times they struggled just to put points on the board and fell behind early, which changes your whole playbook on defense and offense. So being able to get out there and have some successful drives. I know that, Mike Bobo kind of flamed it a little bit, threw some gasoline on the fire when he just talked about first downs. But in this game specifically, I think you want to get some points on the board early on to make sure, not just for confidence, but just to show, okay, we're going to be able to do this all season long. And that also to stay in offense, explosives. You want some explosive plays on offense. You've got some playmakers you've added through the portal. You've got some young guys out there who have had a strong camp. Let's see these guys break off some big plays and give opposing defenses something that they have to worry about at night. And that goes for the other side of the ball too. Some havoc plays from this defensive front. You didn't really get them often enough. You had to rely on your Butkus Award winner and Michael Williams when he was healthy to basically manufacture your pressure. But if that defensive line, if Jordan Hall, if Christian Miller, if those guys can make some plays in the backfield along with some of the younger guys, I think that that'll help, dictate how well this defense plays this year. And also with both of those sides of the ball, if they're able to accomplish that, you're able to get your younger guys more reps, which is kind of that last goal you always want to have in these kind of games. And Georgia's kind of failed in that regard often in the past is you want to be able to dominate early so that your entire roster's out there on the field, because you only have a couple of these games this season. This year you have them at the beginning of the year. You really need to make sure that you get some experience for some of your first and second year players, because that's over half of Georgia's team right now. So I think that's kind of paramount.
Yeah, Kipp hit on one of the big things to me, the first quarter. I was looking at the stats from last year. They averaged just a little over 4 points per first quarter. And, I mean, you're asking to fall behind. And when you look at some of the games Georgia lost, that happened over and over. Some of the folks watching this live threw out some of their thoughts on a successful offense. Blind Squirrel Sports, Saturday will be a success to me if I see Georgia line up and win in the trenches for 60 minutes. Howard Eubanks, no hands on hips, tired. Really interested in that. It looks like the weather's going to work out in Georgia's favor as far as it not being just absolutely miserably hot. But, I mean, this will still be a good chance for those guys. I think that, those are some for me. For me, too, the fast start, I would say, too, when it comes to the different units on the offense, first team, second team, whoever else gets in, really, I think – no more than a turnover per group. I think you want to see them take care of the ball when you look at what's ahead. You want to not get into a situation where we're coming out of this first game and Gunnar Stockton has thrown a couple interceptions. Given the talent and given what's ahead, those will be the big things. And then just kind of going back to what Ben was talking about a few minutes ago, running the ball efficiently. Let's see if they can create some explosive plays and see which running backs get involved. I mean, I'm really a believer that 6 or 7 different guys can get involved and can be a factor for Georgia going into the rest of the season, not just these first couple weeks. Ben, what about you? What do you think is needed for this offense to have a successful first game? What are sort of your personal goals that you think this offense needs to try to hit?
Well, it's going to sound an awful lot like Coach Speak Kirby probably, but you got to not turn the ball over, got to tackle well, are you just talking offensively?
Yes.
So just offensively, I mean, you got to, obviously no turnovers from Gunnar. I think is going to be, as long as Gunnar is turnover free, I think people are going to feel relatively comfortable about the outcome of the game. I think you got to see some explosive plays, preferably both in the passing game and the running game. I personally think explosive plays are going to be more regular to come by in Georgia's passing game than the running game, but I think that Georgia will have some chunk yardage runs. I think getting as many backs as possible involved is important to be able to see what you have from all of them. Like just yesterday, you had Jordan Hall raving about the running back room and almost like forgetting about certain guys as he's going along and then remembering them, because you start to realize how many people could contribute in that room. So I think getting as many running backs involved as possible. I don't know about you all, but I know there's been a lot of talk who's going to start at right guard. I want to see everybody at right guard play. So I think having a successful enough of a day that you're seeing how everyone does against, non-Georgia competition, I think will give coaches a little bit of a sample size of what they can expect on Saturdays from those guys. And then I just want to see something fun in the passing game. I mean, I think that I've said a lot all offseason that I think Gunnar Stockton's deep ball is probably being slept on nationally. And I think that he's got a lot of receivers that can make that. I mean, I think that the number of receivers that can be dynamic for Georgia in the passing game is as long of a list as I can remember. And so I think there's a chance for a lot of fun in the Georgia passing game this season. And I want to see at least one play early. I know that's not a goal that Georgia would necessarily have, at least one play early in the game, that's an explosive passing play. But I do that is something that I would want to see, just to see some fun from the wide receivers this year. And also for Wayne Mungus as well on YouTube.
I was going to ask for that eventually, so I'm glad you came through, Ben.
Yeah,
Always looking out. Y'all could correct me. Didn't they try to run like a double pass on the first play of G-Day? Do either y'all remember? There was something like that because I was like, man, we're so back.
I don't remember, but someone did ask on the board last week what it's call your shot first play of the game. There was a lot of 2-yard run, screenplay, whatever, which not ruling those out as possibilities by any means. But I called the play action slot fade 75-yarder to Zachariah Branch. So that's sort of how, in a perfect world, that's how everyone's Saturday starts.
You've heard it here first. This is why you guys listen to the Junkyard Dawgcast. All right, Ben, I'm going to play Kirby out of context right here, and I need to get your reaction.
Jordan's just, number one, he's bright. Number two, he cares. He's passionate, and he plays really hard.
Sure.
I thought that was so nice of him to say that. Now, plays really hard. I guess he was talking about me on the sticks on College Football 26. But for Kirby to go out of the way to say that, man, that meant a lot to me.
Say Jordan's really bright. I mean, that's the first time that I think you're going to have heard this on this podcast ever. So credit to Kirby for the take that Jordan's really bright. I will say, knowing that he's not referring to Jordan Hill and he's referring to Jordan Hall, a common misconception around butt smear, of course. Jordan Hall is just such a delight, man. He is the best that Georgia has right now in that press conference format. And I think a lot of fans, they know where we get a lot of our, conversations with players. They might not be, if you don't watch every YouTube video with all the press conferences, you might not realize, there are guys who are good quotes or have good energy or whatever. And then there are people that have a press conference presence about them and they have a thoughtfulness about them. And obviously when you're talking about 18 to 22-year-olds, you're not having a ton of guys that are just completely comfortable in that environment. Jordan Hall is so comfortable in that environment. He's one of those players that I think you root for just because of what he's been through during his career and just because he does have a way about him where he needs to have a big year this year. Georgia needs him to have a big year this year, and he's the type of guy that you want to see have a big year. So someone that really has impressed all offseason, but definitely was impressive yesterday when we got a chance to meet with him.
Yeah, really enjoyed talking to Jordan Hall, and he was great back in the spring, too. I really hope Georgia allows us to talk to him going through the season. And like you said, Ben, he's an easy guy to root for. He has stress fractures in both his legs last year. I mean, he doesn't play at all until the second week of November, that Ole Miss game. A former 5-star, thought he gave great perspective on Elijah Griffin and trying to kind of help him along and, kind of block out the noise and the expectations. Did want to play this clip from Jordan about sort of the mindset of the Georgia defensive line and just any defensive lineman in particular. If I'm a Georgia fan, this would get me fired up. This is what Jordan had to say.
Personally, what I feel like, the standard has always been the standard. Stop and run is always the biggest thing. So that's not something we was pretty good at last year. And we all know that, We want to be better at doing that. But I think the mindset is just sending the message to everybody, making sure that we know that we're the Georgia defensive line. We're going to try to come in and stop and run, be physically imposing, and then play to our standard. Well, I don't think there's no extra pressure, no weight that it wasn't already on us that, it would be different from last year or this year or the 10 years before now. So it's the same thing, just going out there and playing hard and having fun. I think that's the biggest thing that we need to worry about, just making sure we go out there, execute, have fun, and do our job. That's all.
Kipp, I don't know what your read on the situation is. There's been so much talk about Christian Miller, but to me, Jordan Hall's almost more important just because of his potential. He's a guy that I think last year had a chance to push forward. Mabel Body on Facebook says, remember Jordan Hall. This is a guy that, I think can have a huge impact. And I think it's huge as much of anything to have that kind of leadership in that room. What do you make of Jordan Hall going into this season?
Yeah, I mean, I feel pretty good about Christian Miller's role and being probably, that the big tackle right there in the middle, but kind of after him, yeah, it's kind of a question mark. And to that end, they brought in Xavier McLeod for a reason, and I think he's probably going to rotate in with both those guys. You kind of have that pecking order right now with the D line where Xavier might not start a lot of games, but he'll probably play just as many snaps as those two guys. But it's a big year. It's a prove it year for Jordan Hall because, yeah, when you come in as a highly rated defensive lineman at Georgia, there's an expectation. And I know that, Kirby Smart would love to push back on that, but he knows, like, you don't recruit those guys to this program, seeing the success, what they've had in the field in recent years, and not expect to try to maintain that quality of play. And they just did not have that last year. And it had an impact, a ripple effect on the entire defense. I think the fact that you had the linebackers and Jalen Walker doing what he did, it's just more of a credit to him than anything because it just wasn't up to the standard. And you've had all off season of them being told that now. These press clippings aren't the same as what you're used to, but what you read last year may have had a negative impact on your level of play. Everyone thought they had already made it to the league, and a lot of them were, and they didn't. And I think Jordan Hall is going to have a huge role in how Georgia's defense plays this year. And I think that how deep that defensive line, if they have the depth to return to form, is probably the biggest question I have with this defense. Like, do they have the guys to be able to play up to the previous standard? Not, it doesn't have to be 2021, 2022, the greatest, depth of all time at this program, but playing to that caliber, knowing that depth across college football isn't the same, is still the goal. And I think Jordan Hall, he knows that. It's just up to him. If he could stay healthy, I do think the sky's the limit for him. He's that first guy off the bus type, and he's got a chance to be a leader on this defense.
All right, looking to this game on Saturday, Georgia Marshall, we will have a preview pod on Thursday with Chris McLaughlin from Herd Nation, our 24/7 Sports Marshall website. So we will go really in depth on that game. Kipp and Ben won't be on that pod, but I do want to give them this opportunity here to talk about the matchup and what they're kind of looking for. And I'll start with you, Kipp. What's sort of your expectation for how this game plays out? You don't have to give a score, but just general thoughts on what we see on Saturday and how the Bulldogs handle week one.
Well, kind of carrying off what I just said, I think domination on both sides of the line of scrimmage is what I would look for from Georgia. This offensive line play, just like the defensive line, knows it has to get better. It may have been the weakest part of Georgia's team last season was the offensive line play. So, how can these guys improve? How can they, bounce back? It's a point of attack. It's allowing your running backs to, get yourself in advantageous situations. And I think that's my other thing is you're going to see a lot of different running backs get carries in this game. And we've talked all offseason about who's RB2 for this team. Honestly, I think right now it's probably Cash Jones. And I've kind of hinted at that a couple weeks ago on the board. He's probably the guy they feel the most comfortable with being the backup. But Chauncey Bowens is stacked enough solid practice together to where I see him probably getting as many carries, if not more, than a guy like Bo Walker. And, those are the two guys that Georgia's, needs to see big things from because you kind of know what you have, with Frazier, with Cash. These guys being quality SEC level backs would go a long way towards Georgia's offense being more explosive because we know they have the talented wide receiver room, a lot of potential in the tight end room. So I do think that the line of scrimmage dominating there and establishing these running backs and getting them a lot of carries early and often is probably the overall expectation I have for this game is that you're just seeing these guys rotate in and break off big plays throughout the day.
Ben, what about you? What's your expectation from Saturday? What do you think is what the fans who tune in are going to see from the Bulldogs? You got to unmute.
I got it. You muted me. Now I'm responsible for unmuting myself. I mean, Kip, what kind of operation is Jordan running over here? All right, so ask me the question again. You lost me.
You're good. You're good. Just what you expect to see on Saturday, how this thing's going to play out for Georgia.
I mean, I think that, I do the Pro Football Focus report every Sunday and it has grades, but I think the thing that always intrigues me more than the grades is the snap counts and seeing how many players played at certain positions. And I think it's interesting throughout the year to start to see trends of how rotations work. Like, I remember one thing that last year that really stood out to me was Ben Urosic starting to get 30 snaps a game towards the end of the year and sort of equaling Lawson Lucky and Oscar Delp's snap count. And it just became interesting because Georgia clearly got more confident with his snaps as the season progressed. And I think you see a lot of that. I bring all that up to say, I expect Saturday's snap count chart to have just about everybody on the roster on it. And I think if that happens, it was a good day for Georgia. I think on offense and defense, if there is as many names as possible on that participation chart, that means that the game was in hand enough that you felt comfortable getting some young guys involved. And it means that everybody got reps and opportunities in real Saturday action. And so, that's to me what my expectation is. And that's what I think will be probably the best indicator that Georgia had a good day against Marshall.
Again, keep an eye out Thursday, probably 12 p.m. Eastern time. Our video with Chris McLaughlin from Herd Nation will go up, and we will have a chance to talk about Georgia Marshall and learn a little bit about Georgia's Week 1 opponent. I want to shout out some of the folks who are watching this live. Gary Holt up in LJ, that's up in my neck of the woods. There, and then Mabel Body in Central Florida. If you guys are watching this live, let us know where you're watching, and we'll make sure and shout you out. We're going to take a quick break here in a minute, but first off, want to again plug our fall camp sale going on, 50% off. That sale ends at 11:59 p.m. this Thursday night, so please jump on board. Join us over on the Junkyard. A great time to join before the start of the season. Going to be a fun season following along. We'll have our game threads. We'll have all kinds of game content. Before long, we'll be talking about basketball season and then getting back in the spring with baseball season with Olivia Sayre hanging around and covering the Diamond Dogs for us. Did want to shout out a new element we'll have for the podcast. Looking forward to this from game week. We will be doing the Junkyard call-in show. We'll be using the website SpeakPipe, and we will plug this as the games go every Saturday, where it will allow, if you are watching, you can go to this website and record an audio file and send us your thoughts, your concerns, your complaints. Give us feedback on what you learned. If you got questions for us, you can hit us up there, SpeakPipe. Once we get closer to the season, that'll be on the Junkyard board, and you'll have a way to do that. And if we get enough of those after Saturday's game, we will do a whole show on Sunday with your questions and your comments, and we will make sure and share that with everybody. So take a quick break, come back, and talk about the big news from the SEC last week. Hey, coming out of this break, let's shout out some of the other folks who are watching this live. Howard Eubanks in Ellaville, Donald Rumney in Fort Myers, Florida, Go Dawgs 706 in Athens, just like myself and Ben, though he is on location right now. We got Anthony Mann in Loganville. Know Loganville quite well, so appreciate y'all all tuning in. All right, let's talk about the news from last week, news that we've been waiting on for quite some time from the SEC. The SEC finally announcing it is moving to a 9-game conference schedule beginning in 2026. This was something that was anticipated, but not a slam dunk, as the conference tried to decide what the next move was, getting ready for the future after sticking with 8-game conference schedule in 2024 and 2025. Interesting parts of this announcement. The SEC will continue with its single standings, no divisions, as it's done the last year. Each school will play 3 annual opponents focused on, quote, maintaining many traditional rivalries, and each team's remaining 6 games will rotate among the remaining schools. And part of it, too, SEC teams now required to schedule at least one additional high-quality non-conference opponent from the ACC, the Big Ten, the Big 12, or Notre Dame. A lot there, Kip, but just want to start with your general reaction, not just for Georgia, but the entire SEC when it comes to the conference finally moving to 9 conference games beginning next year.
We kind of all knew this is where it was going to go. Not surprised at all. I think the fact that you're going to be able to keep some of your rivalries intact, I think is really important about this. I mean, you have to find that balance. I mean, you're not really worried about strength of schedule with something like this. I think at this point, knowing that the playoff is going to expand again, kind of gave them, the comfort and made it just not really debatable, because I feel like every spring and every single SEC meeting, we're like, are they going to make a decision here? Are they going to make a decision here? How long are they going to wait? And it really turns out they're just waiting to stoke the fires for playoff expansion to make sure they get enough teams in, which makes sense. All the conference commissioners are battling for that. They're all jockeying to try to get as many of their guys in as they can. And I think now that they know they're going to not be lacking in numbers there, they can go ahead and go forward with it. I think now just trying to battle and see which of those 3 teams is going to be entertaining. But I think every team in the conference has like a solid 2. Some teams have like 6 and 7. They have teams in line trying to line them up as a rivalry game. But I think for the most part, as long as you get your top 2 rivalry games locked in, that's the baseline, and that's kind of exactly where everything needs to be. So I'm not surprised by any of it, and I don't think anyone should have like this strong opinion one way or the other that they went to this. It's more competitive games, and it's more SEC football. Anybody who's against that, I'm not really sure what to tell you, because these games are always, in my opinion, the most entertaining as far as just the fan bases, the pageantry of the environment and everything. It's the best.
This is one of the, when you look at all the changes in college football, this is the one that I've for sure been the most excited about. I can't tell you the last time the SEC, or really college football as a whole, made a change that had me this pumped, because I think this is the right decision. After the conference added Oklahoma and Texas, I think it only made sense to add that additional game. Everybody wins, in my opinion. ESPN is going to give the SEC more money. ESPN gets more marquee games. I think that there's a push for the SEC to play some outstanding competition each and every week. And if some of that is them playing teams within the conference, then so be it. It's a good product. And I think that, fuels good, entertaining schedules, and will motivate fans to show up and go to games. So really excited that they made this decision. It's not going to make life easy for any of these teams. I saw Gary Holt asking about Auburn. A team like Auburn, they are going to play Alabama and Georgia every year. I feel very confident about that. And then you're kind of looking at, okay, who's going to be the 3rd team? I think Vanderbilt's a really popular pick just because of competitive balance, that sort of thing. I'll test this real quick. Ben, are you still with us, or have you finally departed?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm here.
All right, what's your thought on the 9-game schedule and the SEC making that move?
Well, I mean, I think anybody who's complaining about SEC moving to a 9-game schedule must be a head football coach, because I can't think of any other reason why you would be complaining about it. I mean, I get it. As a fan, you're likely to lose more games. Guess what? So is everybody else that's getting a 9-game schedule. Get over it. Like if we get more opportunities to see good football games against good teams, like I look ahead and I know it's going to change, because when you do future schedule look aheads for Georgia, there's certain years where I think it's likely to see some matchups go away. But Georgia has some home and homes coming up with Louisville and Ohio State and Florida State, and then they've got some future like FCS and G5 opponents scheduled. But like you look ahead, I think it's 2030 maybe that Georgia would have, and again, things might change, but 9-game SEC schedule, Clemson, Ohio State, and Georgia Tech. If those are Georgia's 12 games, there's not a single bad game on Georgia's schedule. There's not a single game that you're not going into with extreme excitement and intrigue. Now, again, do I think that one of those games likely changes in 2030? Yeah, it probably does, just because you are going to try and get competitive advantage wherever you can. And if it means cutting back on too difficult of a schedule, you're probably going to try to achieve that when you're now playing 9 games in SEC play. But I personally don't think it's a coincidence that the approval to move to a 9-game schedule happened shortly after the clarification about how strength of scheduling model is going to be part of the college football playoff algorithm, or whatever it is that they're using to try and decide, who strengths of schedule. And so I think those two things happened in lockstep. I truly do. And I also think that it's just good for Georgia fans. It's good for season ticket holders. It's good for any fan base across the SEC. And yeah, you are probably going to end up losing more games in the regular season than you did in the past. And I don't necessarily think that that's a bad game. If I could have it my way, I would argue for 12 SEC games and it just be the entire regular season schedule. And then you go to the college football playoff from there. But that's another conversation for another day.
Ben, just absolute team chaos. And I will say this, we might need to stick with Ben just showing up audio only. I don't know what it is. I kind of enjoy this a little bit more. Also, it's great because I just muted him, so he can't retort. All right, another piece of this that's going to be really interesting is the 3 permanent opponents. We don't know yet when the SEC is going to announce that or who each team's going to get. And I'm going to kind of change this question. I think the very popular assumption or projection is that Georgia would get Florida, Auburn, and Kentucky being kind of a competitive balance pick because of having to play Auburn and play Florida. I don't want to ask that. I want to ask you, Kipp, if you were in charge, if Georgia came to you and said, you know what, Kipp, we're going to let you pick the 3, who would be your 3 picks for Georgia's permanent opponent, and why would you pick those 3?
There's really only 2 ways to go about this. It's one, if I'm talking about the longtime Georgia fans and maintaining tradition, the pick will be South Carolina. They've been, they played each other for such a long time, regardless of, how competitive the matchup was. That's just the longer, I don't want to say rivalry game, but just the longer battle between the head-to-head. Entertainment-wise and competitive games, it would obviously be Tennessee. I mean, if you just wanted like the best football games on an annual basis, for better, for worse for Georgia, then the third team I think should be Tennessee, because that game, I mean, the last 3 decades has just been outstanding, and so those 2 fan bases go at it so often on social media and just in general that it's just an outstanding game to have every year. But I agree with the competitive balance. Like Kentucky makes the most sense. There's that chance that South Carolina is kind of the halfway you bridge your gap between keeping a more, a long running game. And so that's kind of the game where I think that might be the compromise game. But because I don't think having a Auburn, Florida, Tennessee trio would win a lot of favor in Athens and the powers that be there. So I don't see that as a realistic option, but for the fans, that would be the obvious choice.
Yeah, for me, it's South Carolina, along with, I think Auburn and Florida, those are locks. Go ahead and take that to the bank. But I go South Carolina, and it's almost as much about South Carolina as it is Georgia. When you look at South Carolina, who would be, those permanent picks for them? I mean, I guess maybe Florida because of the SEC East history and Spurrier. You could say maybe Missouri. You've had those battles for Columbia, but like there's the most obvious pick for me for South Carolina is Georgia because you've got those border states. They've had some fantastic games, especially when they were in the SEC East. Some really important games in those early 2010s. To me, that is the most obvious pick. If I were in the position to choose, I think it's between the schools that Kipp said, that it's South Carolina and it's Tennessee. And Tennessee's got Alabama and Vanderbilt and trying to find that third, and maybe it's Florida. But to me, I would go South Carolina. I know that I understand the importance of the competitive balance piece, but give South Carolina a nice little border rivalry. Georgia and South Carolina have had some good games. I think it makes sense to go in that direction. Ben, who would be your 3 teams if you got to pick?
Well, I think Florida and Auburn are the non-negotiables. So I think that it's like where you're really having a conversation about who is the third team that Georgia has, because like we've all said, Auburn and Florida aren't going anywhere. There's too much history and tradition and rivalry that all of those schools want to be able to maintain with that. I would push back a little bit on the competitive balance side of things because, one, we don't really know who's going to be competitive and who's not going to be competitive moving forward. I mean, quite frankly, Florida and Auburn have been competitive, once each in the last decade. So it's not like you can pencil them in as like, oh, these are going to be difficult games to have as your common opponents. And so I don't necessarily think Georgia has to have, and I think it's almost disrespectful kind of to like South Carolina or Kentucky or Vanderbilt say like, oh, Georgia needs to have a diminished opponent, when it's like there have been plenty of examples of Kentucky and South Carolina being better than Florida and Auburn over the last decade. So, I think that you don't know for certain what the competitive is going to be. So I don't think about that as much, even though I know some folks probably will, and that will probably be the basis for certain decisions. So again, I do like the idea of South Carolina. It sort of depends what lens I'm looking through it. If I'm Josh Brooks and I'm trying to advocate on behalf of my university and my alums and my boosters and my fans, like I'm going to push probably for more traditional rivalries because they want to see South Carolina or Tennessee, maybe not so much Kentucky or Vanderbilt, but it would make sense. But I want to just say something. Like we're in this new age of the SEC, right? Like the SEC is not what it was a decade ago. And it's probably not even going to be a decade from now. It's going to be even different from that. And so I am not opposed to trying to inject some new age, quote unquote, rivalries across the conference. And I know this probably from the competitive advantage standpoint would not be beneficial to either side. But I think there's an opportunity for Georgia and Texas right now to have something that could be really special over the next 20 years. And I think the opportunity to have those two teams playing every year would be incredible. Now, does it make sense for either side? I don't know. But I think that and this isn't just a Georgia-Texas conversation. I'll say this too. I think there are opportunities across the SEC to have some tradition, newly created rivalries. Florida, Texas, maybe is another example that I think would be great. But I think it would be fun to have some new every year rivalries. And so I know that we're defaulting to, well, they've traditionally South Carolina and Kentucky and Vanderbilt, whatever. It's like, that's kind of to me what Florida and Auburn are for in Georgia's 3 common opponents every year. You have those traditional rivalries that you can lean on and you say these are the 2 non-negotiables, but then there's still an opportunity to play some of the other teams in the conference. And, I'm just hopeful that we're 10 years from now able to say that we were able to go to all these various stadiums multiple times, and it's not the first time that Alabama's coming to Georgia in 10 years, or Georgia hasn't gone to Texas A&M at all since they've been in the conference. Like, these are the types of things that I think should be easily corrected, and people should be okay with saying, all right, if you're getting to keep 2 of your historic traditional rivalries, maybe it's not the worst thing in the world to be able to try and create a new third one. Or, for that matter, nothing stops it from being some other team in the old SEC West that's not Texas that you can create some kind of new ongoing rivalry with as well that hasn't really existed in the past in the SEC, but certainly could in the future of it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with Ben, honestly. I brought up, I wouldn't hate seeing Texas every year for the entertainment value. Now, folks on the Junkyard, they voted that down pretty quickly. But no, I'm for it, and I get what Ben's saying. Look, this is the SEC in 2025. Let's take advantage of it. Let's add some fun to it and kind of build up some rivalries, like an Oklahoma LSU or something like that. Really take advantage, because these are all the 16 teams, and a big piece of this is the historical standpoint and trying to maintain these long-standing rivalries. But no, I'm with Ben. I wouldn't mind seeing Georgia and Texas every year. Now, Kirby Smart is going to lose a whole lot more sleep if that's the case. But I don't hate that idea. Kip, what do you think?
Good luck telling the people in Texas that they will not be playing Oklahoma, Texas A&M, and Arkansas every year. That's just one of those teams where we're trying to inject new blood into this conference and rivalries, and I agree that would be fun. But those 4 fan bases, there's too much oil money, and there's too much just I don't think that would go very well for you. But you know what? I would love to actually realize what Kyle Field looks like. I mean, I've heard about it. It's rumored to be a place that is hard for some teams to play. It's impossible for Georgia to play there. They can't even get in town. So College Station. We're still waiting. I think we're playing at Oklahoma, playing at Texas, things that if you would have told me that would happen before playing Texas A&M, I guess like a decade ago or whatever, I would have it wouldn't have made sense. I would have been like, those are a hell of a couple of home and homes that they signed out of conference. But here we are, still just imagining what it'd be like to play at Texas A&M. So yeah, I like the thought of just having a randomizer for the third team, just using the random number thing, and then and having the third team just be randomized every 5 years maybe or something like that. Sure. Knowing that this conference will probably not expand in the next 5 years as well. So yeah, let's not worry about the third team so much as knowing that as long as Florida and Auburn are the first 2 teams, for Georgia specifically, you've got it right. I think every other game is just going to be a good one, and that's why you have a 9-game schedule now.
Speaking of good games, we are getting ready for a really entertaining Week 1 slate of college football. Week 0, that was like a nice little appetizer, kind of like the appetizer that you kind of think might have came out of the microwave. But you know what? We're ready for a full meal this week, some good games. I'm going to start with you, Ben. Give me a game or two that you're really interested in, what you want to watch aside from Georgia Marshall.
Well, I'm just going to go ahead and steal all the games that that all of you guys are about to talk about here, because to me, 3 games across Saturday and Sunday, Ohio State, Texas, Clemson, LSU, and Notre Dame, Miami have such massive college football playoff implications in Week 1. And I think it's hard to find a Week 1 where you have that many. That's 6 teams with legitimate college football playoff aspirations that will have 3 teams 0-1. And you're going to be looking at an 0-1 Texas or an 0-1 LSU or an 0-1 Miami, and they're going to be feeling a real certain type of way come Monday morning. And I don't know how I think any of those 3 games are going to go. I think it's also fascinating. I think I could see them breaking either way, and it just changes the trajectory of all 6 of their seasons, really, depending on how it goes. And so for me, that's what I'm looking at, is like, I just can't remember a Week 1 that seemed to have such college football implications. And on top of that, that's not even mentioning games where things are going to not going to go the way that we think they are. Everyone has these preconceived notions about Week 1, about, any team ranked in the top 20. And those notions are going to change, right or wrong, based on how these Week 1 performances go. And chances are there's probably a team that thinks that they're a college football playoff type of team that's going to lose in Week 1. And so I think we're going to have, at least 4 college football playoff types of teams lose this weekend. And that's, I think, going to make for a fascinating rest of the season.
Ben hit on a lot of the big-time games. I'm going to throw out one of the Friday night games, Auburn at Baylor. You can't make too much out of one game, but I swear, if Auburn loses this game, the pressure on Hugh Freeze is going to go through the roof, new claimed national titles or not. So that's one I'm really interested in watching. But Texas, Ohio State, LSU, Clemson, Miami, Notre Dame. I'll shout out to the game to end the week, TCU and North Carolina, just to kind of see what the Bill Belichick era in Chapel Hill looks like. So those are some for me. Another Friday night game, too. I'll shout out Georgia Tech, Colorado. It looks like there's kind of some trash talk going on the Colorado side, and I think Georgia would be quick to say, look, y'all better watch out with Brent Key. I really like Georgia Tech. I think they could be a sleeper in the ACC this year. Kip, any of those games you want to hit on, or any we missed that you want to shout out in week one?
I mean, I've kind of maintained most of the offseason that I'm kind of selling Arch Manning, at least going into the season. I think that's going to be a rough game for them, just going into that environment.
Agreed.
And the fact that people, I don't think really have talked about all the guys that Texas lost. It's just, I think the only X factor is the fact that you're not really sure what to expect from either quarterback. They're both inexperienced. They're both highly touted coming out of high school. So maybe that's just kind of a wash. But then at the same time, Ohio State lost a lot on their defensive line. That's kind of a wash between Texas's offensive line as well. They lost guys. So in the end, I'm looking at which team has Jeremiah Smith and Caleb Downs. Well, there you go. That I like Ohio State in that game. Kind of a sleeper game, I guess, for me is I want to see Fran Brown going into Tennessee. I just think, Tennessee's coming off a 10-win season. They made it to the college football playoff. But you went most of the offseason thinking you knew what you had at quarterback, got thrown a curveball. You got Joey Aguilar in there as your starter. Fran Brown had an outstanding season last year as well, and they return a lot on their team. I just think that this is one of those where he can kind of change the trajectory of the Orange program. They're also coming off a 10-3 season, and you go 10-3 and in your first year. I mean, what are the expectations in year two? I'm curious to see that he's probably got a pretty confident team there. They feel like they can play anyone. But let's overlook the fact that they didn't play SMU, Louisville, or Clemson last season. But at the same time, I just think that you got a veteran, Kyle McCord, running the show. That could be the difference in a game like that. So I just think that that is an interesting game where I think Tennessee's favored by like 14, but I could see that being a single-digit game going in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, McCord is no longer there. He moved on to the NFL, but still, I think that's a big opportunity for Syracuse, and that's a situation where they might be able to pull off a big upset, especially because that Tennessee offense – I'm not sold on Joey Aguilar, and Saturday will be our first chance to see that in action. All right, we're going to end the episode right there. I appreciate Kip and Ben for popping on. Ben doing a fantastic job bouncing between his laptop and his phone. He did a great job of staying in and hanging out with us for the long haul. Thanks everyone who watched this live, everyone who is watching or listening to it after the fact. Subscribe to the Junkyard Dawgcast wherever you get your podcasts. Go subscribe to Dawgs247.com. Again, 50% off sale ends at 11:59 p.m. Eastern time on Thursday night. Be sure to get signed up. Get ready for another huge season of Georgia football. Had someone text me today is National Dog Day. So let's shout out all the dogs and the dogs out there getting ready for football season. Subscribe to Dawgs247 on YouTube, on TikTok. A lot of good content there. And again, hang around this podcast these next few days. We're going to have the preview pod with Chris McLaughlin tonight, and we'll probably drop this on Wednesday, doing the Georgia Beat Show, a new podcast that's going to be me, Roddy Nobulsi from UGA Sports, Dean Legge from Dog Post, Jake Rowe from Dogs HQ. Have us all on there and talk about different topics around Georgia. Hoping to do that pretty regularly, and I hope you guys will join in. I think that'll be a fun one. So we will end the episode right there. For Kipp Adams and Ben Wolk, I'm Jordan Hill. Until next time, take care, everybody.